Hey, my name is Thomas, and today let's talk about the Fuji X-E3 and also about the brand new Fuji X-E4, of course. That was just announced a couple of days ago. This is the X-E3. I'm using this camera since about 3 years. Yeah, basically since it came on the market in October 2017. So this is going to be a very personal insight, sort of a long-term review. I'm going to walk you through this thing. And I'm also going to talk about what we know so far about the new X-E4. So let's have a go. So I already made, in fact, a video about the whole Fuji X mount camera system. If you want to have a look, see in the info box. This is going to be about the X-E3, which is sort of the compact travel camera, and it's also a very essential Fuji body. Like the X Pro, this is the series that has maybe the most original Fuji genes in it, which is a lot about the experience and also about the design of the camera. So these are cameras that you sort of love or you sort of don't really get the point, I think. The X Pro is the more professional model and has this unique optical viewfinder that you can, switch between optical and electronic viewfinder. The X-E is more basic. It only has an electronic viewfinder. And yeah, it's, as you can tell already, it's sort of, it looks really sleek. Huh? It's a small and sleek camera, and it's even smaller when you remove the hand grip. This is optional. This is a Mikey hand grip, but of course you see it's a really small camera. It's maybe too small for some people's hands, but yeah, if you want a bigger camera, you can always go to the other series, the X Pro or the XT. The thing about it is, I have got this old classic Olympus pen, and as you can see, they really match in terms of size. This is a bit more heavy, the old-fashioned all-metal build. This is also sort of an APS-C camera if you want so, because you get 72 photos on one roll of film instead of 36. So even that is kind of similar between these two. So the Fuji X-E series, this is sort of the small, the compact, the traveler sort of camera, and it's also designed to appeal to a specific crowd of photographers because it has this all sort of, analog dials here. This really works like a classic camera, so you've got your dedicated shutter speed dial here, of course with an auto setting. You've got your dedicated exposure compensation dial here, and all the lenses, this is not a Fuji lens, but also all the Fuji lenses, almost all of them, have a dedicated aperture ring here. So in operation it really feels a bit like a classic camera. In addition to that, it's got two small command dials here and here. Normally I assign ISO to the front command dial, and the rear command dial I can use when I'm using manual lenses. You push and you can zoom in, stuff like that. It also has a joystick here. That's very important because with that you can, if you put it on autofocus, then you can move your autofocus point with that. Apart from that, the button set is kind of reduced, as you see. There's not many buttons going on here. Very important for any Fuji is it's got this Q button. So if you press that button here with a Q, you get into this sort of settings menu where you can do anything, and you can either do it by touch or you just do it with a joystick and this command dial. Very simple setup. You don't often go into the menu. You've got certain other things like, for example, the film simulations just on the touch screen interface. So this is definitely not a camera where you have everything, for everything a button. This is more a camera that tries to be simple. So it's not targeted towards, sports photographers or people who always have to change settings very quickly. This is more targeted toward the, the advanced amateur photographer who values the simplicity of this interface and also can live with certain shortcomings. And yeah, it's really very, very similar in operation to an analog camera. So what's bad about this camera? There are 2 or 3 things I really don't like about it. Nonetheless, I love it. The number one is the viewfinder is really kind of small, and also looking through it is not so nice because yeah, when the sun shines, and you often get sort of reflections here because also the eye cup is very marginal. The viewfinder magnification is quoted as 0.62, that's not a lot, but also the Fuji XS series and the Fuji X-T10 2030, they all have the same small viewfinder image. The X Pro is a little bit bigger with 0.66, but if you really want a good viewfinder with a high eye point and a nice eye cup and stuff like that, if you want a good viewfinder experience, I would always say go to the X-T1, 2, 3, 4 series, because then you get a 0.75 viewfinder, and in comparison to this, it's just like a huge 4K view. There is no contest. This viewfinder is marginal. So often you will be maybe using the screen instead. The other thing is the camera does not have IBIS, in-body stabilization. I find that a bit sad given the fact that today, I mean, we've got 2021 by now, and an iPhone can take a handheld night shot at 5 or 10 seconds of exposure time, and with this camera without IBIS, if you're using a normal wide angle lens, you're limited to about 1/30th of a second, or maybe 1/15th if you're really holding your breath. Well, IBIS would be nice. The Olympus Pen F has it, but it's also an old model. I think it's out of production by now. I really would have liked Fuji to include the IBIS. The third thing is, of course, in terms of hand grip, I find it good. Actually, it's a small camera. It's not meant to be a super grippy professional body for big lenses. You're going to use this with small lenses, and you've got this very grippy thing here. It's not very big, but it's very grippy compared to the leatherette here, which is more slippery. And you've got this nice thumb grip here. So it sort of works for me. And if you don't like how it handles, then you still can, you know, adjust a grip like this. With this, it's a bit more heavy. Also adds an Aka Swiss plate. Of course, the hand grip also has a second tripod socket. And you still have access to the battery and the memory card. This is a Mikey grip, but the original one from Fuji just looks basically the same. So yeah, that's about it. How about the performance of that thing? Yeah, this is the 24 megapixel sensor generation that was first introduced, I think, in 2016 on the X Pro 2. And in 2018 then came the 26 megapixel, which is the current generation. In terms of image quality, they are both exactly the same. It really doesn't matter if you've got 24 or 26 megapixels and high ISO, dynamic range, all that stuff is completely the same between the two sensor generations. However, the old sensor generation lacks a bit in terms of continuous autofocus, eye tracking, stuff like that. Some people criticize Fuji for being not really up to date anyway, so even the most current Fujis are still maybe not as good as Sony A6500 or stuff like that. But yeah, these are compact travel cameras. I think they are aimed towards another type of photographer who doesn't really need the ultimate autofocus performance. And I mean, there are so many guys out there who are still using an X-E1 or X-E2 with the old 16 megapixel sensor, and they seem to be very happy about it. So in my opinion, yeah, I'm showing this with a manual lens, but I of course also use autofocus lenses like the 23 f2 or the 50 f2 or the 35 f1.4, all beautiful lenses. In my opinion, the autofocus is snappy, it's accurate, I never had any issue with it, but I'm not a real action photographer. I'd really use this more as a sort of travel camera. I also print big, that's not the point, but I'm just not into sports or stuff. And I think most XE guys won't be that much into sports photography like dog races or stuff like that. If you are into that, have a look at other cameras. But in general, this is still very capable of doing anything. I don't have any issue with that. Yeah, so as you can guess, my overall verdict is I really love this camera. What's the best about it? Yeah, I'm just a fan of this user interface, and there's just not a lot of choices left. I mean, who else does it like this? The Olympus Pen F was a very similar camera in terms of overall concept, but it doesn't have the classic user interface. The Pen F looks classic, but it operates like a modern digital camera from like a Sony or a Nikon or something. You just got twin command dials and the PASM dial on top, you know, that stuff. You don't have these dials like here. And all the other brands also don't do it. It's basically only Fuji doing this and Leica with the M, but that's also a completely different story. So I'm a huge fan of this camera. I also love the design of the body. I'm a guy who loves aesthetics, and maybe even I value aesthetics a bit more and simplicity a bit more over pure practicality. So yeah, this is really made for me. As I said, if you can live with a small viewfinder, if you're happy without having no IBIS, this is just a really cool, capable digital camera. Which brings us to the new X-E4. What do I think about the X-E4? Obviously, I didn't handle it yet. I urge you to have a look to the other, the first reviews that are out on YouTube. For example, Samuel Streetlife. I put the link in the description below. He tells you everything you need to know about the new X-E4, but there are also other brilliant reviews out there from all these guys who get the cameras from Fuji before they are even announced. Have a look there if you're in the market for a camera like this, and keep in mind, it will be, your selection is basically between the X-E3 and the X-E4. If you want a traveler camera, if you want a small compact camera with a classic design and this sort of interface, you only have these two options. The thing with the X-E4 is it looks so cool. I love the new looks. Does it look better than this? No, it just looks different. It's even more reduced. With this reduction come some certain changes you have to accept. Like this grippy part I mentioned here, which is now hidden a bit behind that grip. This grippy part here is gone. The whole X-E4 has this more slippery texture, leatherette like this. Also, this part is gone. There is no thumb rest anymore. They of course offer these add-on grips again. I'm sure also Mikey and all the cheaper manufacturers will offer them for the X-E4, so that fixes your grip in the front, but here you don't have a thumb rest anymore. To replace the thumb rest, they add this thumbs up thing that goes in here. People with old Leicas do that sometimes. I personally think that's a bit of a hipster feature more than, yeah, really practical, because if you add this thing here, this is a small camera, you know, and when you, for example, if you want to operate this dial and there is this thing going on here, it will be maybe a bit more fiddly. The Q button is now here. This camera here is an auto button, auto switch. That's by the way gone in the X-E4. I tell you about that in a minute, but the Q button is now here, and again, if you have this thumbs up thing here, I can imagine it's a little bit fiddly to get there. So what's the thing with this auto lever? You see this thing here? You've got the setting auto and non-auto. Basically what it does is it sort of defaults the camera into a setting where shutter speed, ISO, aperture, everything is selected automatically. Even the autofocus points revert to some sort of automatic selection. You put this on auto if you hand over the camera to someone who doesn't have a clue, like, I don't know, and they want to take a snapshot, then you put it on auto, nothing can go wrong. And then you go back to manual and you have your own settings on it, like, or you take, I don't know, tripod shot, you're at 30th of a second and then all of a sudden something quick happens, or you have the exposure comp dial set to something, or aperture is on something. Of course, auto aperture only works with an autofocus lens. Then you switch to auto and the camera will be happy to snap anything that's going on very quickly without you worrying about the settings. However, the big problem with auto is it also defaults the camera to JPEG only. You don't get RAW when you use this auto setting. That's the reason, because I'm a RAW shooter, that I never used it. If I had the X-E4, I'm pretty sure I would get this grip. It also looks pretty cool, but I would never get this thing here. And I would just live, you know, maybe I'm an easy guy. This camera doesn't have a grip, no thumbs, rest, nothing, and I'm happy to handle this. Maybe I'm very easy there to please. Apart from that, the X-E4 adds a flippable screen that you can flip like this and also completely upwards, and then you can take selfies. That's very handy, of course. And what's nice is how they integrated this screen into the design, so when it's really flush with the body, it looks a very snug fit. That's very nice. They reduce the number of buttons considerably. This thing has, let me show you, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buttons, and here an FN button is 9. On the new camera we've got 5 here and 2 here, which is 7, 2 buttons less. Now I know it's cool to reduce the number of buttons, but I'm just not sure yet if it really affects the handling of the camera. They also did away with this handy switch here. Can you see it? This switch is for autofocus, manual focus, so you have like manual, continuous and single autofocus. Also gone on the X-E4. That means if you want to change the autofocus, you either have to assign it to one of the few buttons that are left, or you maybe can assign it to the touch screen interface, or you have to go into the menu. Try it out for yourself if it works for you. The last thing is this joystick. I think it fits pretty well here to your thumb. You see it like this. On the X-E4 it's down here because there's one button less, and they moved down the joystick so you won't be handled like this, you handle it more like this. For me it's not a big deal, but I already saw some comments of people saying, oh, this is much more ergonomic if it's up there. Again, I think Fuji goes for style and for reduction. Personally, I totally welcome that approach, and I'm even happy to live with some certain ergonomic shortcomings as long as the style is really cool. But maybe it's not everyone's taste. My biggest gripe with the X-E4 is it still doesn't offer IBIS, and I just told you why it's, in my opinion, a very important feature, especially for a street and travel camera where you're not gonna carry a tripod or stuff. Yeah, it really should have had IBIS, but they didn't do it, okay. I also saw some complaints that it is not weather sealed. Well, I didn't expect that from this sort of camera. I think these cameras can handle some rain and stuff even when they are not weather sealed. I never had any issues, but of course it's not weather sealed. Maybe also would have been a nice addition. That brings me to the price. When this came out new, it was 799 euros, and that's 3 years ago. Now we got a kind of modest upgrade and it's 899 euros, which is a lot of money if you ask me. I really would have preferred it to be 799 or maybe even 699 euros because it's nice, it's stylish, but it's still a bit basic maybe. Of course, it's got the new sensor, 26 megapixels, so autofocus performance is definitely better than here, especially in continuous and tracking stuff. It will be improved. Video autofocus will be better. So if you really value that, and if you happen to be very unhappy with the 24 megapixel Fujis in that regard, then the X-E4 is a great upgrade. So as you see, I'm a little bit underwhelmed. At the same time, I'm so happy that Fuji still does continue this lineup, because it really looked like they would scrap the whole series, the E-series. I hope the X-E4 will be a success, so they're gonna continue doing this. In terms of price performance, of course, I can just say have a look at used offers or maybe closeout sales of the X-E3, because This thing is 350 euros used, the new one is 900 new. That's a lot of a difference. But if you love the X-E4, get it. I'm sure you will be very happy. So yeah, that's it. That's my summary of the X-E3. I hope you found this useful. If you did so, if you have any questions or comments, write something in the comment section below. I love all your comments and I will happily answer every single one of them. Also subscribe to my channel, of course, if you haven't done so yet. It's a great help. Thanks so much to all the subscriptions I already got. I appreciate it a lot. And yeah, stay healthy, stay safe, have a good time, and I see you in the next video. Bye.